why you're the only country in Latin America that has adopted the working definition of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance.
It's because Uruguay has a strong tradition of human rights. And the human rights, you don't count them in number, you count them in attitude. It don't depend if the human rights are managed for one person or 1,000 people. It's human rights. And that was a tradition of our country without depending who's in government.
Ha padecido el pueblo judío a lo largo de la historia y que ha tenido su punto culminante y más terrible con el Holocausto, a lo que nos obliga es a que eso no ocurra, a hacer todo lo necesario para que eso no ocurra con nadie.
Bienvenido. Welcome, President Duque. We are so grateful. We are truly thrilled that you have found time in your hectic schedule to participate in this conversation among friends. Muchísimas gracias for joining us today to help AJC celebrate 15 years of accomplishments of its unique Belfer Institute for Latino and Latin American Affairs. BILA, as we like to call it, has worked without pause since it was established in 2005 to weave together the many strands of the Latino and Jewish universes in the United States, in the hemisphere, and globally. Looking back, we are most gratified by our continuous collaboration with Latin American nations and their Jewish communities, including your own. Together, we have contributed both to ensuring their well-being and to bolstering democratic, inclusive, and peaceful societies. And we also feel elated that in the last years, the trilateral ties between US, Latin America, and Israel have grown exponentially and that we have played a part. In this framework, our relationship with Colombia stands out. Your country is considered the US and Israel's preeminent ally in Latin America. Relations between these countries are deemed strategic, anchored in shared histories, common values, and growing interests. And all of them have had to grapple with terrorism and deeply understand and value peace and security grounded in democracy and the rule of law. We are thankful that throughout many, many years and encounters, together with our Colombian Jewish partners, whether in Bogota, New York, or even virtually, as today, we have built such tight relations with your country and with you, Mr. President. We remain deeply appreciative for your receptive ear, for your clarity of thought, your moral courage, and your friendship towards AJC, Colombian Jewry, the US, and Israel. And of course, for this very special conversation. So let's get started. Thank you so much again for being with us.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure for me, and it is an honor to participate in this event, and it ratifies from my heart my friendship with AJC.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. My first question has to do with the state of affairs in your country. How do you see it overcoming the many challenges derived from the COVID pandemic? And what are some of the issues, the priorities at the top of your national agenda?
Well, the most important challenge that we face right now is not only to deal with the pandemic, but also how do we get the economy back where it was in pre-pandemic levels. We closed 2019 with a very important growth that was above the world average, the regional average, the OECD member countries average, and we also closed the fiscal cap with the largest reduction of the fiscal deficit. We closed 2019 with a very important and significant amount of foreign direct investment. And we also closed 2019 with very promising developments in different areas. Obviously, we have had to face the pandemic. There has been a world major crisis, maybe the biggest one since the Second World War. But as of today, I think we have been able to demonstrate that we were capable of duplicating the ICUs in Colombia. We had a very important level when the crisis emerged, and we have been able to duplicate it. We have expanded the capacity for do testing, to do at the same time tracing and isolation of patients that become positive after they test. And we have also been doing something that it's very important, and it is that as we have been protecting the life and the healthcare system for citizens, we have also been protecting life and the environment for SMEs. So we have been providing subsidies for the payroll. We have been paying 40 or 50% of the payroll for those companies that have lost 20% or more of their income based or derived from the pandemic, so that we can protect the employment. And we're going to extend that program until March. We have also created a program so that we protect the poorest of the poor. And we have included people that were never in the past recipients of government aid. Now, we're talking about more than 3 million people are receiving a monthly check that is called the Solidarity Income, and is going to be available until June next year. And it has been an instrument to guarantee and focus resources for almost 10 million families. With that, the system of conditional cash transfers have also been working because we have extended extraordinary payments. So we can say that almost 30 million Colombians have benefited from all the social safety net that we have built in the midst of this crisis. And yes, today we have more than 95% of the economy running. We have 92% of recovery rate. In terms of contagions per million and deaths per million, we look in about much better shape than other countries in Latin America and even in Europe or the rest of the world. We know this is not a challenge between countries, but it's good to know that our performance in terms of those indicators has been very positive. Now, how do we navigate this out? How do we put together a program so that we regain what we have lost? And that's the reason why we launched the Compromise for Colombia, which is the equivalent of our New Deal. We launched it in July, and it's saying to have more than $50 billion in investment that are either public, private, or PPPs. And we're investing in renewable energies, in technology. We're investing in roads, and we're investing in agricultural sector. We're also expanding the coverage of water, sanitation, and tertiary roads. So all this is going to trigger what we call the fastest employment generation program ever by a Colombian government, which is aimed to generate almost 2 million jobs. All things are happening, all this is happening, and at the same time, we have been accomplishing the goals of our National Development Plan. We're going to close the year 2020 with the lowest homicide rate since 1976. We're going to close the year 2020 with not only a substantial reduction of most of crimes, and maybe the most important in the recent decades, but also this is going to be a record year in terms of seizures of illegal drugs, and also in the eradication or reduction of illegal crops. So this is happening because we believe in security. We're also pushing forward the entrepreneurship agenda. We're about to approve in Congress the entrepreneurship bill and the tourism bill that are going to be enablers for startups and for multiple sectors to evolve. And we, at the same time, are making strong commitments to fight climate change. We just announced that we are going to commit to a 51% reduction on CO2 emissions by 2030. No other country in Latin America has made such a pledge. And we are also working on the energy transition, clean transportation, and we're pretty much aware that everything we're going to do about development is in harmony with protecting our biodiversity, since we are the country with the second biodiversity per square kilometer after Brazil. So I don't want to, take too long to respond to the question, but those are the things that are in the agenda. Obviously, we have challenges, but we have demonstrated that Colombia is working hard not only to recover from this pandemic, but to keep on achieving all the objectives that we define in our National Development Plan.
Thank you. Very, very impressive. When we met last October, we had a meeting with you last October. You shared part of this vision, which is very bold and very ambitious. And you spoke also about how relations with countries like Israel could help you overcome some of the challenges, and not only overcome some of the challenges, but can also move forward Colombia in the high-tech sector, etc. You spoke about the possibility of working with Israel to make Colombia the Silicon Valley of Latin America. So I wanted to ask you about relations with Israel, the free trade agreement that you recently signed, the opening of an innovation office in Jerusalem, and we hope very soon of an embassy in Jerusalem. Can you comment about that, Mr. President?
Colombia and Israel have had a long history, a very strong relationship. And we have demonstrated in this administration that we want to make that relationship stronger. Not only fighting common enemies in terms of security, because we have adopted the European Union and the United States terror list that includes Hezbollah, among other terrorist groups that have attempted against the state of Israel, but have also attempted to other states around the world. So we share that common security purposes to fight narco-terrorism. And we have also demonstrated that this agenda is broader. And that's why we signed the free trade agreement with Israel, something that I said in APAC at the beginning of the year that this was going to happen during my administration, and it did happen. And we were with Prime Minister Netanyahu sharing the importance of the free trade agreement. And also, we're about to open the innovation office in Jerusalem, and the innovation office is going to be in the innovation district, and is going to be aligned with other private sector and research centers so that we can get the best lessons out of the Israeli experience. That's why we want to multiply the lessons from the JOSMA funds. That's why we want to take the best lessons of the Startup Nation so that Colombia can meet the purpose of becoming the Silicon Valley of Latin America. And also, I must say that we're going to increase technical cooperation in multiple areas, including the agricultural development. So I can say that Colombia represents the #1 ally of Israel in Latin America and the Caribbean. But this is an alliance based on principles, based on entrepreneurship, the defense of security, the defense of democracy, but at the same time, providing the best opportunities possible for those who are in need.
Thank you. And we feel very, very proud and very fortunate to have you as an ally and as a partner. I wanted to go back to what you said about Hezbollah, because there's very few countries in Latin America that have designated Hezbollah in its entirety as a terrorist organization. And Colombia really plays a leadership role in the region. So I wanted to ask you, what could we do more to persuade these countries to follow suit and to be part of this growing list that understands that by denouncing and isolating these groups, it's the only way that we will have a secure hemisphere and a secure world?
Well, first of all, I guess we all have to assume that terrorism is a common enemy of humankind. Terrorism doesn't discriminate where it takes place. It can take place in the streets of Madrid or London. It can happen in Buenos Aires. It can happen in Tel Aviv, or it could happen in Bogota. We know how terrorism works. And I think we all have to define that as an enemy to fight and to destroy. Because terrorism wants to generate instability and social turmoil and create uncertainty. And we all know that it doesn't matter whether they have ideology or not. It's terrorism itself what defines those groups. So there's no difference between the dissidencies of FARC or the ELN or Los Pelusos with Hezbollah or with ISIS or with Al-Qaeda. They all are the same. So we all need to combat frontally and with intelligence cooperation and operational cooperation how those groups are structured around the world. We have to dismantle them. So that's the most important thing to say. Now, in the case of Latin America, I think what has been very coherent is that most of Colombia's terrorist groups have been included in the terrorist groups list from the European Union and from the United States. And it's also happened in other parts of the world, like Israel. So what we have said in Colombia is that we're going to apply the same list that the EU has and the United States has, and there's Hezbollah. And we all are sharing information to detect and to dismantle operations that they could plan in different places around the world. And if they do it in Latin America, the sharing of information makes us stronger in this fight. So we will continue to embrace that cause, and we will continue to make a call to other countries to adopt both lists, because I think it's not only consistent, but coherent. And at the same time, it allows our security forces to be more competent. So that's where we stand on that issue.
Absolutely, thank you. As you know, Hezbollah was responsible for the worst terrorist attacks we've experienced in Latin America in 1992 and 1994 in Argentina. So yeah, no, we've experienced Hezbollah's impact firsthand. Mr. President, we're about to inaugurate a new U.S. administration, and we would like you to share with us what is the state of U.S.-Colombia relations, and how do you see the incoming Biden administration impacting your agenda, the bilateral agenda, and also how you expect it to change in general terms in the relations between Latin America and the United States?
Well, I certainly believe that the most important asset that has been built in the bilateral relationship between the U.S. and Colombia is that this relationship has been bipartisan and it has been bicameral. So it means that no matter who the presidents are, the relationship based on principles and common objectives has been strengthened day over day, year over year, decade over decade. I still remember the days in the 2000s where President Clinton inaugurated the policy of Plan Colombia with former President Pastrana. That was very important for Colombia. It was very important because it became the right tool to fight narco-terrorism. And the information, the facts demonstrate the positive impact it had. Now, during the Bush administration, security ties were strengthened, but also there was a major step in the bilateral relation, which is the free trade agreement between Colombia and the US. During the Obama administration, not only trade continued to expand, but there were other coordination in other multiple aspects. And in the Trump administration, and I must recognize that, the Trump administration has been very friendly with Colombia, has supported Colombia in the moments of need, not only to face the tremendous inflow of migrants coming from Venezuela. Mm-hmm. We have a fraternity policy, but the US has been there to support us. And that means a lot to Colombia. The Trump administration has also supported Colombia to fight terrorism. And it has supported Colombia to access the OECD, and it has supported Colombia as well to be relevant in other multilateral debates throughout the world. So I also value that. And that makes me optimistic that with the Biden-Harris administration, things are going to continue positively evolving. President-elect Biden has been a close friend of Colombia. He was one of the architects inside the US Senate when Plan Colombia was created. He has been knowledgeable about the evolution that Colombia has taken place. And there are many members of his team that know the transformation Colombia has achieved. So I am optimistic that we will continue to strengthen our security ties, our trade ties, and that we're also going to be connected in issues like energy transition, also clean mobility, the reduction of CO2 emissions. And at the same time, we're going to work together so that there's a new chapter in the bilateral relation that continues to be strengthened as we launched the joint action plan months ago, and also Colombia growth. All these elements, I think, are very important so that we continue being the #1 ally of the United States in Latin America. And we are the #1 ally, not because we are complacent. We are the #1 ally because we share values, because we share common goals, because we defend democracy, because we defend a market economy, because we defend the value of SMEs, because we defend the value of providing opportunities for those who are in need. So I'm certain that this will continue to evolve positively and that it will remain bipartisan and bicameral.
That's great to hear and very heartened by it. And as I said at the beginning of my presentation, the trilateral relationship between Israel, Colombia, and the United States is grounded on values, common interests, common histories. So we are sure that during the incoming Biden-Harris administration, the relationship will only continue to get stronger. Speaking about values, one of the values that we think is very important is the value of inclusion. And as you know, in the last years, we have seen the increase of hate speech around the world, of prejudice. Anti-Semitism has grown by leaps and bounds in Europe, in the United States, in many places around the world. In Latin America is not an exception, although it's not as bad as in other latitudes. This interview is being listened by and seen by hundreds of Jews from around the world, including many from Latin America, small Jewish communities that punch above their weight, including the remarkable Jewish community of Colombia. I wanted to ask you about the Jewish community of Colombia, and I wanted to ask you also about your perception regarding anti-Semitism in your country or elsewhere in the region.
Well, I always have rejected anti-Semitism. I believe anti-Semitism is a mental illness, and it also constitutes a horrible form of expression. So throughout my life, I've not only fight those expressions, but I also consider that we have to be pedagogical enough day by day so that those sentiments will never, ever grow back again. And the Colombian history is a history of inclusion. The Colombian history has been enriched by the Afro-Colombians, by the Aboriginal communities, by the conquerors who came at a certain point, and then the colonial period. They all have enriched the country. In the last 200 years, we have had very important migration flows from different parts of the world. And I must recognize the importance of the Jewish community in Colombian history. The Jewish community has been instrumental for the development of the air and space sector. It has been instrumental for the medical sector. It has been instrumental in the industrial sector. It has been fundamental in academia. It has been fundamental in the arts. It has been fundamental in traditions. And as we, for example, share in our religion freedom policy, events like the Hanukkah, you know that these events, even if they are subscribed to a group of people that share the religion, we have to value that has become also part of a national tradition. So I think for us to see how the Jewish community participation in Colombia keeps on strengthening day by day, it's a motivation, because we believe in religious liberty, but we also believe that the expression of religious liberty enriches a society by itself. And we consider that when we celebrate, when we share those moments, we're also telling society that this is a country that is open for everyone, that this is a country that rejects hatred, segregation, or just any form of negative expression against another person by its color, by its faith, by its speech. We are truthfully a state that believes in a social environment of sharing the values. And I must say as well that all the contributions that we have received along our history from the Jewish community in Colombia, we want that to keep on expanding. That's why we value so much the free trade agreement with Israel.
Mhm.
That's why we have valued that we'll have the innovation office. That's why we value that we're also having experts from Israel supporting us in the healthcare system and also in agriculture. But we also value that when it comes to faith, the interreligious dialogue also allows people to have a better understanding on what the world is like. So I want to take this opportunity to send a message of gratitude and brotherhood to all the Jewish community in Colombia.
Thank you so much. I'm sure that they will appreciate and value very much this message, although we know that your friendship goes beyond words and that it's practiced every day. We know you have a very strong and close relationship with our partners from the Jewish community of Colombia. But I know that other Jewish communities around the world are appreciating your message and your openness. Finally, Mr. President, I want to ask you, I could not ask you about Venezuela, which is, I think one of the biggest challenges for the hemisphere as a whole. It's your neighboring country, and the impact of what's going on there on Colombia is very severe. There's 5 million refugees that have left Venezuela, and I believe 2 million of them are in your country, etc. I would like to ask you, how do you view the problem? How do you see the new US administration tackling? What would you recommend the US administration to tackle this issue? And what is on the horizon?
If I may say that in the way that countries behave in the international community, one thing that has been maybe substantial in the last 3 or 4 decades is that the world has decided to say no clearly to the expressions of dictatorship and brutality. The world never hesitated to denounce the atrocities committed by Gaddafi. The world never hesitated to denounce the atrocities committed by Slobodan Milosevic. The world never remained in silence as apartheid was taking place. There have been causes that unite the world because it's the right thing to do, because it's to be a participant in the right side of history. So what we're seeing in Venezuela is the most brutal dictatorship in our recent history. Maduro can be compared to Slobodan Milosevic. He can be compared to Gaddafi. He can be compared even with the Saddam Hussein. He can be compared with the most brutal dictators ever seen in the history of the world. So we cannot remain silent. We need to raise our voice in a coordinated way day by day. And it's not for the community to keep on observing whether Juan Guaido is going to be strong enough to knock Maduro down, because it does not depend on Juan Guaido himself. It depends on the consistency and the strength of the international community to put the right pressure so that 4 things are met: the end of the dictatorship, the creation of a transitionary government with broad participation, where the democratic resistance is there and also where the Chavistas are there so that they can call for free elections. And then there's a reconstruction process. Those are the 4 things that we have to be united and not try to become interpreters of what's taking place, because every day it turns worse. More people are suffering, more people will migrating, more people will die out of hunger, more people will die because they don't have access to medicine. And I think what we cannot do is just be pure spectators. So my call for the whole world community at this point is that this needs to come to an end. The Maduro regime is about to have another electoral process fully manipulated and now to silence the expressions of the assembly. So we all need to sustain our efforts, not recognizing Maduro, and even to apply more sanctions and isolate the regime and call the Venezuelan people and the Venezuelan military and every single diplomatic effort so that Maduro comes out of power, the transitionary government with the broad participation is established, free elections are called, and a reconstruction process takes place. That's the simple thing we all have to do, and not be so opinionated and not try to second guess everything that takes place. This is the moment where the world is going to be evaluated whether we were capable of supporting the dream of the Venezuelan people to regain their liberty, or that we simply throw the towel. I'm not going to throw the towel. I'm going to keep defending my principles day by day, because we have received 2 million Venezuelans, brothers and sisters, that have come to Colombia looking for shelter, for support, and we know it's costly, and we know it demands a lot from us, but they don't have another alternative. Obviously, this is unsustainable, but we need to have the whole world to be united in the one simple effort to put an end to the most brutal dictatorship that Latin Americans have seen in the last common and recent history.
Thank you. And I want to assure you that AJC won't throw the towel either. We have raised our voice, and we will continue raising our voice for the return of democracy to Venezuela, and for the end to a dictatorship, and to all the pain that is happening in the country. So you can count on us for that.
Thank you so much.
No, it's our principles, it's our values. You know, as you know, we value human rights, and that is our universal call. We do it in Latin America, and we do it around the world.
Thank you so much. It has been an honor for me to participate once again in AJC. My best regards to all of you, and I look forward to see you soon in Colombia.
Thank you. We remain very admiring of Colombia's leadership and of your leadership, and we wish you much success in facing the challenges ahead and implemented your bold and ambitious agenda for your country. Hasta muy pronto. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias. Un placer.
Igualmente.
I recall it as if it were yesterday, dear friends, though it was 15 years ago. I met someone very special, someone who embodied leadership and who exemplified vision. And her name was Dina Siegel-Van. And she had joined the American Jewish Committee, and she had an idea. She had a dream. She wanted to combine all of her passions, her passion for her native Mexico, her love of Latin America, her abiding commitment to the Jewish people, her connection to Israel, her embrace of her adopted country, America. She wanted to put all these pieces together and do so under the umbrella of an institute. And thus, BILA was born. And Dina was the founding director. And over the last 15 years, I've had the pleasure and indeed the privilege of witnessing the remarkable evolution and growth of BILA. I've seen it up close. I've seen its impact, its real, tangible impact in changing the course of history, in making a difference. If you stop to think about what BILA is trying to do, it's not always easy to put it together in one sentence, because there are so many moving parts to it, but they've all come together quite seamlessly. So I think, for example, of my own experiences. I think here in the United States, for example, of seeing how Latino-Jewish cooperation has just continued to grow with so many of the Latino communities across the country. I've seen it nationally, I've seen it regionally, I've seen it in the United States Congress. I've seen it in so many different ways as these two communities, the Jewish community and the Latino community, continue to develop new sources of cooperation for our respective priorities and concerns. I've seen the attention that Billa has paid in the United States to ensuring that Latin America is not sort of the neglected stepchild on the global map. Because too often for American policymakers, Latin America is there when it's a source of what's perceived as problems rather than as permanent neighbors and permanent opportunities. And Billa has tried to help ensure that hemispheric issues are given proper attention in the United States. I've traveled with Dina in small groups, in large groups, to Mexico, throughout Central America, throughout South America. I've lost track of the number of times that we visited countries like Chile and Argentina and Brazil, all in the service of advancing Billa's agenda to strengthen ties with every Jewish community in the Western Hemisphere, to strengthen ties with as many governments as possible, to try and stitch together again that fabric of the Western Hemisphere, including the United States and including Latin America, and then putting this together with the Iberian Peninsula, with Spain and Portugal, which have such specific and unique cultural connections to Latin America. And of course, ensuring that Israel is a central part of the discussion and of the equation. I've seen the number of project interchange trips that Billa has organized, working often with local partners to bring distinguished leaders from Latin America to Israel to let them see Israel for themselves. And of course, the distinguished roster of alumni include the current president of Uruguay, among others. I've seen the kinds of relationships that have been developed with other presidents, including, of course, President Duque of Colombia, who's been the distinguished guest of this 15th anniversary Billa gathering just a few minutes ago. And we all heard how impressively he spoke both about the work of AJC and of Billa, and also his commitment to so many of the core issues that are of concern to you and to us. I've seen Billa's work in advancing humanitarian needs, whether it was Puerto Rico or Guatemala ravaged by natural disasters, and Billa wanting to demonstrate our friendship when it was most needed. So I can keep going on and on and on because I am a true believer in the work of Billa. I'm a great admirer of all those who've been associated with Billa: Bruce Raymer, the founding chair; Tom Kahn, who succeeded Bruce; Mario Fleck, and then Tom Kahn, who returned to join with Mario Fleck as co-chairs. I'm enormously grateful to Robert Belfer and the Belfer family, who lent their distinguished name to this institute and helped ensure its success. I'm grateful not only to Dina, but to the great team that she assembled over the years, to Stephanie Giloff, to Daniela Green, to Juan Dircy, to Muriel Asarov, and to those who are no longer working with AJC, but who left an indelible imprint. So as we all gather on this 15th anniversary occasion, I think there's reason to pause, to marvel, to celebrate, and there's also reason to recommit, because the work, if anything, only grows still more important and more high stakes and more timely. Latinos are by far the largest minority in the United States, and we, the Jewish community, we, AJC, want to ensure continued strong, prosperous, cooperative relations. The work in Latin America continues, both the opportunities as well as the need to keep vigilance because of dangerous actors that have always tried to penetrate the region, including from Iran, including from Hezbollah. We want to continue to maximize the potential for relations between the Spanish and Portuguese-speaking worlds and Israel. There's a lot of work to be done. And I know that in the capable hands of Villa, the next 15 years will be as glorious, if not more so, than the first 15 years. So, dear friends, together with you, I salute the work of Villa. I salute this occasion that brought us all together. And I hope the next time we have the opportunity to come together under the Bill of Flag, if you will, it will be not via technology, but has always been the case in the past, in person, whether in Mexico City, whether in Bogota, whether in Miami, whether in Washington, wherever it may be. May this be a year of good health, and may next year, may we come together in person.